Hey everyone, Pastor Ryan here. Glad to be with you today to introduce the next episode in the Sabbath project that is presented by the Ann Arbor Christian Reformed Church. We have already had 2 episodes, the first of which Dr. Travis West gave us a biblical and creational perspective of what the Sabbath is. How it is a new way to think about time and how it is part of creation, embedded in all of the stuff of creation itself. In the second episode, I walked us through how this pandemic of COVID-19 has exposed a faulty sense of time as it relates to our identities and to work, and how God is inviting us into a new story of the triune God. And that makes us, or invites us into a turn of this episode, which is that this pandemic is also an opportunity for us to think about new practices and new rhythms that relate to Sabbath. It gives us an opportunity for reorientation for a way of being in the world. And so to do that, I am going to introduce to you my wife, Megan, who along with me has been doing a lot of thinking and practicing what it means to live into Sabbath. Enjoy.
Welcome, week 3 of this Sabbath project. Here we are. And you have me. My name is Megan, and I am Pastor Ryan's wife. And as Ryan mentioned, I am here to invite you to see some of the practical ways we can begin to experience Sabbath in our week. Maybe like you, when I hear the word practical, the thesaurus in my mind says things like easy, fluid, accessible, effortless. When a person exclaims, "Oh, it's so practical," there's almost this assumption that whatever this thing is, a new piece of clothing, maybe a diet trick, a multi-purpose tool, maybe it's a new recipe that's really simple. Whatever it is, it definitely won't take up more of our time. In fact, it's so practical, it will just slip easily right into whatever you've already got going on. I've also found it to be a great excuse to explain why you've gone over budgets. So hang on to that. Now let's switch gears. Let's talk about the word Sabbath. I will readily admit that I don't think my thesaurus has any crossovers with the list given for practical. In fact, most of my thoughts head to the direct opposites of the list previous. My mind tells me things like difficult, tension, hidden somehow, forced. Sabbath is asking to swallow a chunk of our time that is already heavily sought after real estate and cannot be divided any further. So how am I doing so far? Does a practical Sabbath sound like something you can be effortlessly invited to participate in? Okay, so hold on to that for a minute while I take some time to describe my own experience understanding Sabbath over the past several months. You got to meet Travis a couple weeks ago in the first video on Sabbath. Last fall, I had the opportunity, along with my husband Ryan, to take Travis's Sabbath course through Western Theological Seminary online. It's been both exciting and a little terrifying to now, during this time, continue the conversation around Sabbath that we started so many months ago. Since then, the day-to-day has changed dramatically, but the things I learned about my relationship with Sabbath have seemingly stayed the same. Through this course and the authors we were invited to read, I came to realize some things about my relationship with time and how it is connected to my anxiety. Something I've come to understand about myself is that when I start my week looking at my calendar with pages open and all 7 days have something on it, something written in or scheduled, there's this wave of angst that comes over me. A full schedule overwhelms me. I noticed a pattern connecting my heightened levels of anxiety to my overly scheduled week. Travis made mention of a linear understanding of time. It's this understanding that had me looking at my weeks and months like a pile of endless tasks to complete. Now, also during the fall, like probably many of you, I was doing a book study through our women's ministry here at the AACRC about the liturgies in our church tradition. For me, getting to know these liturgies more intimately offered a renewed appreciation to the why of these liturgies. I started to take notice of them in a way that I had never before. I learned that I loved the consistency of them. Their predictability calmed me. Let me explain. When I entered the doors on a Sunday morning, and God greeted me each week with open arms of grace and peace, I could exhale the anxieties of my week away as the waters of baptism washed me again. Christ's light, as the candle is lit, pushed away my loneliness I sometimes carried in with me. The word encouraged me in hope. The table feeds me, and the benediction sends me out with an invitation to come again. Did you catch how God cares for us each week? Maybe it felt familiar to you too, these liturgies again. He embraces, washes, protects, uplifts, nourishes, and restores. It is these liturgies that offered a way for me to see this new, or very old rather, understanding of time that is the flower. The liturgies of the church became my center. And each week that I was shepherded into had the promise of God's embrace of grace and peace upon my return again. Now, as many of you know, God has such an amazing way of pulling from several sources at the same time when He is really trying to reveal Himself to us. Clearly, last fall was no different for me. God's weekly invitation to Sabbath and its reminder to ground ourselves in Him, coupled with my new revelation that the liturgies are a foundation that have the power to steady me, felt like snapping that last missing puzzle piece in its place. I was able to reorient my relationship with time around a center axis that grounded me. It was God and our church liturgies. Now, here we are, not gathering together, doing liturgy in the best way we can, but seemingly incomplete. This time with a stay-at-home order has been disorienting, to say the least. But I think this time of disorientation invites us to see things new. This time of ceasing from the orientation of life as we knew it, maybe ceasing from going into the office has created a liturgy of family. Ceasing from a hurry to get from one place to the next has presented a rest with a book in hand. Ceasing from quick meals on the go has put life around our tables again. Ceasing from our overscheduled days has found us out and enjoying nature on long, winding walks. Ceasing from labels like essential or non-essential workers, as Ryan mentioned last week, returns our identity to the gifts that God placed in us to do good work in Him. Ceasing from overt comfort of our privilege has grown our hearts toward men sheltering in place at our church. I believe that this is a time with a God at work in us. We have an opportunity here of learning in our midst and a responsibility to take notice of what God may be teaching. I miss gathering together. I miss walking through the liturgies as one body. I imagine that when we're able to slowly re-enter our sanctuary and can gather again, that the liturgies will well in my eyes and probably burst in my being. But as I reorient my way with a renewed understanding, I pray that I don't miss the opportunity I have to continue the new thing God is inviting us into. So how can we hang on to these new rhythms? As we find our way back into our society, how do we keep ourselves from the excuse of not having time once again? Our invitation is to observe Sabbath, to ground ourselves in the liturgies and sacraments of our tradition, to reorient ourselves in time, and creating a new system of priority for time. In all these things, hold on to the gift of rest that God created. Hold on to the things that have been grounding you in this time away from our sanctuary. Take these things into our time back together again. So, grace to you on your new journey with Sabbath.